Sophia hummed softly to herself as she moved around the kitchen, her round belly brushing gently against the edge of the counter. She was 9 months pregnant, carrying their first child, and yet tonight, she wanted everything to feel perfect. It wasn't just any evening, it was a moment she had meticulously planned, a romantic surprise dinner for David, her husband. She envisioned his smile when he walked through the door, the warmth of his embrace, and the sense of connection they had shared in the early days of their marriage. The thought made her heart flutter with excitement and longing, and she tried to push aside the tiny nagging doubts that had crept in over the past few weeks. The dining room was transformed into a soft haven of intimacy. White candles flickered gently on the table, their golden light dancing across the polished wooden surface. A bouquet of fresh roses sat at the center, their fragrance mingling with the aroma of the food she had spent hours preparing. The table was set with care, polished silverware, sparkling glasses, and carefully folded napkins. Every detail was meant to convey her love and the depth of her anticipation for this night. Even her outfit was chosen with care, a flowing, soft dress that accentuated her pregnancy glow, paired with delicate jewelry that shimmered under the candlelight. Despite the care and joy she poured into preparing the evening, a small tension lingered in the air. David had been different lately, more distant, preoccupied, and late returning from work. Calls went unanswered, messages remained unread, and she had begun to feel a creeping unease in her heart. She tried to ignore it, chalking it up to work stress or fatigue, but the thought gnawed at her mind like a persistent whisper. Still, she refused to let it overshadow her hope and excitement. Tonight, she wanted to believe in the love they shared, to feel connected and cherished, and to create a memory of intimacy and joy before the baby arrived. Balancing her pregnancy fatigue with excitement, she moved gracefully from the kitchen to the dining room, placing the finishing touches on the candles, food, and flowers, her heart swelling with both anticipation and a fragile hope that this evening would be everything she imagined. Sophia's mind wandered back over the past few weeks, trying to make sense of the small inconsistencies that now seemed more noticeable. David, once so attentive and open, had started behaving strangely, slipping into secretive patterns she hadn't seen before. She remembered the nights when he would receive calls late, his phone vibrating insistently on the nightstand, only for him to excuse himself briefly, insisting it was work stuff or a colleague needing urgent help. Then there were the times when he seemed distracted at dinner, staring at his phone and typing quickly before tucking it back into his pocket. He had even changed passwords for the shared streaming accounts, citing some vague security concern, a move that felt unusually guarded for someone so familiar. Each incident alone might have seemed minor, but together, they formed a subtle trail of unease that Sophia couldn't entirely ignore. Yet, she brushed off the doubts, focusing instead on her pregnancy and the belief in the life they were building together. She reminded herself that stress could make anyone behave oddly, that work pressure might explain long hours and distracted glances. She leaned on hope, telling herself that David loved her, that he would return to his usual warmth once the baby arrived, and that these small inconsistencies were nothing to worry about. Even so, small moments kept planting seeds of suspicion. One morning, while folding laundry, she noticed a faint smear of deep red lipstick on one of his scarves, something that hadn't been hers. Her stomach churned, but she pushed the thought aside, blaming perhaps a client or a mistake in the laundry. There were also messages on his phone she occasionally glimpsed, cryptic, deleted conversations that made her heart skip a beat. Each clue seemed innocuous enough on its own, yet collectively, they hinted at a truth she wasn't ready to face. Interactions with friends and family further highlighted the contrast. To outsiders, everything seemed normal. David smiled, joked, and acted like the devoted husband. He would laugh at her stories, hold her hand, and reassure her of their happiness. But Sophia, acutely sensitive in her pregnant state, could sense the tension simmering beneath the surface, the silent weight of unspoken secrets. The contrast between the appearances of normalcy and the undercurrent of betrayal built a quiet, suspenseful tension in her heart, foreshadowing that the perfect evening she had envisioned might take an unexpected and devastating turn. The dining room glowed softly in the warm flicker of candlelight, each flame casting gentle shadows across the polished wooden table. Sophia had spent hours preparing every detail, from the perfectly arranged silverware to the carefully folded napkins that stood like delicate little sculptures beside each plate. A bouquet of roses sat in the center, their petals a deep, passionate red, filling the air with a sweet fragrance that mingled with the aroma of the food she had so lovingly prepared. The table was set for two, but it felt as though every element in the room whispered of Sophia's heart and the love she poured into this evening. Soft classical music played in the background, notes floating like whispers across the room, creating a sense of intimacy and warmth that she hoped would make David feel cherished. Sophia moved gracefully between the kitchen and dining area, carrying platters of food that she had cooked with painstaking care. Every dish was chosen to symbolize her love and commitment, comforting flavors, rich textures, and colors that mirrored the warmth and joy she felt in her heart. As she placed the last item on the table, she paused to take in the scene, letting herself savor the thought of David's reaction. She imagined the look on his face when he saw her effort, the spark of happiness in his eyes, and the quiet moment of connection they would share, away from work stress and life's distractions. Her heart fluttered at the thought, her excitement mingling with a tender vulnerability that only heightened her anticipation. But as the minutes ticked by, her excitement gave way to subtle unease. David was late, later than usual, and each passing moment stretched the tension in the room. She tried to shake off the worry, reminding herself that traffic, work, or other delays could be to blame. Still, a small knot of anxiety formed in her stomach. Her optimism clashed with the faint, creeping sense that something was off, yet she refused to let it tarnish her plans. In that moment, Sophia's innocence and hope stood in stark contrast to the quiet tension growing around her. She believed in the love they shared, in the bond they had nurtured over the years, unaware of the betrayal that might be waiting just beyond the doorway. Her heart was full of trust and longing, yet a shadow of uncertainty hung in the air, foreshadowing that the perfect evening she had envisioned might not unfold as she had dreamed. As Sophia busied herself with putting the finishing touches on the dinner, a faint sound drifted from the bedroom, a laugh, soft but intimate, followed by a whisper that carried an undertone she couldn't quite place. Her hands froze mid-motion, the spatula trembling slightly as her heart began to pound. Then came a muffled kiss, unmistakable in its intimacy, and the color drained from her face. For a moment, she refused to believe it, trying to convince herself that it was some trick of the walls, the music carrying sounds in strange ways. But her maternal instincts, honed in these months of pregnancy, whispered that something was terribly wrong. A cold shiver ran down her spine, and she debated internally what to do. Should she rush in immediately and confront whatever she was hearing, or should she step back and maintain the illusion of the perfect surprise, hoping it was all in her mind? Her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter as anxiety wrestled with her desire to see the truth. Every instinct screamed that she needed to act, yet another voice in her head urged caution. If she misstepped, she could destroy the evening, the carefully built romance, or even her own sense of stability. Her thoughts raced, torn between fear and determination. Part of her longed to storm into the bedroom and demand answers, to force the truth into the open. Another part wanted to hold back, to protect herself from potential heartbreak until she was emotionally ready. The anticipation was suffocating, each second stretching painfully as she strained to listen, hoping the sounds would cease, yet knowing they would not. The quiet tension enveloped her, drawing the reader into the suspense of the moment. Sophia's inner conflict mirrored the growing dread in the house, the contrast between her hopeful planning and the shadow of betrayal looming just beyond her vision. Every muffled sound became a prelude to the revelation she was both terrified and desperate to face. Sophia's legs felt heavy as if they had turned to lead, yet some invisible force pushed her toward the bedroom. She moved slowly, almost mechanically, each step punctuated by the quiet hum of the music and the faint crackle of the candlelight from the dining room. Her hand trembled as she reached for the doorknob, heart hammering violently against her chest. With a barely audible breath, she pushed the door open, and the sight that met her eyes made the world stop entirely. David was there, entangled with Elena, his lips pressed against hers on their marital bed, hands tracing lines that once belonged only to her. The room seemed to shrink around her, the warm glow of the candlelight now harsh and accusatory, spotlighting every detail of the betrayal. Shock gripped her first, freezing her in place. Her mind refused to process the scene fully, caught in a loop of disbelief. How could this be happening in her own home, on the night she had planned to show love and devotion? Her breath caught in her throat, a stifled sob threatening to escape as the reality of what she was witnessing sank in. Her body, already vulnerable from pregnancy, trembled violently as a surge of hormones amplified every emotion, making her feel raw, exposed, and painfully alive all at once. Tears blurred her vision, yet she couldn't look away, each second stretching into an eternity as the depth of the betrayal cut into her very soul. Time seemed to slow. She noticed the way Elena's hair fell across her shoulders, the glint of a bracelet David had given her once, now clasped around another's wrist. She saw the ease with which they touched, the laughter that had once belonged to private jokes between her and David, now co-opted by someone else. Every intimate detail made the blow hit harder, each familiar object in the room, a framed photo, a bedside lamp, the sheets she had chosen, serving as a cruel reminder of trust broken. The emotional weight pressed down on her, leaving her heart raw and exposed. Betrayal was no longer an abstract concept but a visceral wound, cutting away at her sense of security, love, and psychological safety. The home she had considered a sanctuary had transformed into a chamber of treachery, leaving her stunned, confused, and wounded in ways that words could barely capture. In that devastating instant, Sophia understood that her life, her marriage, and the simple innocence of her hope had been irrevocably altered. Sophia's legs wobbled as she stepped fully into the room, every muscle tense with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. Her voice, trembling yet sharp, cut through the charged silence. "David, what is this?" The words came out more like a scream restrained by disbelief than a simple question. Her eyes darted between him and Elena, scanning every movement, every expression, trying to make sense of the impossible reality before her. David froze, his lips parting slightly as if he had been caught in a storm he never saw coming. "Sophia. This isn't what it looks like," he stammered, fumbling for words. His usual composure was gone, replaced with a vulnerable, almost desperate, panic. "I can explain, it's complicated," but Sophia's gaze, burning with hurt and fury, silenced him instantly. Each excuse felt hollow, meaningless, a feeble attempt to undo what had already shattered her trust. Elena, on the other hand, stood with an air of arrogant confidence, a smug smirk playing on her lips. "Oh, Sophia, don't take it personally," she said lightly, as if betrayal were a casual matter. The arrogance in her tone sliced through Sophia's already fragile composure like a knife, making the betrayal sting even more acutely. The audacity of Elena's presence, of her boldness in this intimate space, made Sophia's blood boil with an emotion that was equal parts anger, sorrow, and disbelief. Her pregnancy added another layer of vulnerability. Her body ached, her chest tightened, and the familiar fatigue of late-term pregnancy weighed heavily on her, yet her emotions refused to yield. Tears welled in her eyes, and her stomach churned with the unfairness of the situation. She struggled to stay upright, both physically and emotionally, as she absorbed the magnitude of the betrayal. Inside, her mind waged a war. Part of her wanted to lash out, to scream, to hurl everything within reach at the two who had shattered her world. Another part urged restraint, urging her to protect herself, her unborn child, and the dignity she refused to surrender. She clenched her fists, struggling to maintain control, even as her heart threatened to shatter. The scene became a tense battleground of unspoken rules, raw emotion, and the assertion of boundaries. Betrayal had invaded her sanctuary, and now, Sophia had to reclaim herself, not through violence, but through the clear recognition of self-respect, the acknowledgement of limits, and the refusal to accept such disrespect. Her voice wavered but held a steel edge, a declaration that while her heart was wounded, her spirit would not be broken. Sophia stumbled out of the bedroom, each step heavy with exhaustion, betrayal, and disbelief. She barely registered where she was going, her instincts guiding her toward the living room, a space that had once been a haven of comfort and laughter. Collapsing onto the soft couch, she buried her face in a pillow, and finally, the dam of her emotions broke. The tears flowed freely, hot and unrelenting, soaking the fabric and leaving her shuddering with sobs. The grief of what she had just witnessed crashed over her like a tidal wave, leaving her gasping for breath and clutching her rounded belly protectively. Her mind drifted back to the life she had shared with David, the quiet mornings filled with laughter, the first time he held her hand in the park, the way he had cradled her during her morning sickness, always whispering that they would be a family soon. Each memory now felt like a knife twisting in her chest, a cruel contrast to the reality of the betrayal she had uncovered. She remembered decorating the nursery together, their shared dreams of lullabies and late-night feedings, the warmth that had once defined their love. Those memories, once a source of joy, now amplified the pain, making the heartbreak nearly unbearable. Sophia's thoughts spiraled as she questioned herself, her worth, and the reality of the love she had trusted so completely. Had she been blind to the signs? Was this a reflection of her own shortcomings, or simply the cruel indifference of someone she had given her heart to? Her emotions were raw, amplified by the hormonal surges of late pregnancy, each sob sending sharp pangs through her body, making her feel both physically and emotionally fragile. Yet, amidst the anguish, tiny sparks of clarity began to glimmer. She realized that while she could not undo the betrayal, she could reclaim her dignity. She could protect herself and the life growing inside her. Slowly, between the sobs and shaking breaths, she began to make small decisions in her mind, decisions about boundaries, about self-respect, and about the future she would demand for herself and her child. Each thought was a seed of empowerment, fragile but persistent, promising that though tonight had shattered her heart, it would not define her. In the quiet aftermath of heartbreak, Sophia began to recognize her own strength, understanding that true courage was not the absence of pain, but the ability to rise from it with clarity, dignity, and purpose. Sophia's hands trembled as she reached for her phone, her tears still staining her cheeks. She knew she couldn't face this alone, not in her current state, not while carrying their child. After a moment of hesitation, she dialed her mother's number, hoping for comfort, guidance, and perhaps a semblance of clarity in the midst of the emotional chaos. When her mother answered, her familiar, warm voice immediately soothed some of the raw edge of her anguish. "Mom. I don't know what to do," Sophia choked out, the words catching in her throat. Her mother's response was gentle but firm. "Sophia, my love, breathe. Tell me exactly what happened. I'm here, and we'll get through this together." The words wrapped around her like a protective blanket, reminding her that she wasn't alone. Sophia recounted the events of the evening, the dinner she had so carefully prepared, the sounds from the bedroom, and the devastating sight she had discovered. Her mother listened patiently, offering occasional words of reassurance, never interrupting, never minimizing the betrayal, yet grounding her in the reality that she had the strength to navigate the situation. As they spoke, Sophia felt a small shift within her. The conversation revealed not only the emotional support she needed but also practical advice. Her mother reminded her of the societal pressures that often made women feel trapped in situations like this, urging her to prioritize her emotional and physical well-being as well as that of her unborn child. They discussed boundaries, potential steps to protect herself, and how to approach David and Elena responsibly, without sacrificing her dignity or safety. Pregnancy amplified every emotion Sophia felt. Grief, anger, and fear were sharper, yet the instinct to protect her child made her more focused, more deliberate in her thinking. Her mother's guidance helped her channel those heightened feelings into thoughtful action rather than impulsive reaction. By the end of the call, Sophia had begun to form a plan. She would confront the betrayal strategically, gather evidence, and ensure that she and her child were safe and secure. The conversation left her with a renewed sense of strength. She realized that allies existed even in moments of deep crisis, and that seeking support was not a sign of weakness but a necessary step toward reclaiming control over her life. Sophia sat quietly in the living room, her hands resting protectively on her rounded belly, her mind racing yet strangely clear. The initial wave of heartbreak and fury had passed, leaving behind a sharper, more focused determination. She realized that reacting impulsively, shouting, lashing out, or making hasty decisions, would only leave her vulnerable and potentially compromise her safety and that of her unborn child. Taking a deep, steadying breath, she made a conscious choice. She would confront this betrayal strategically, not emotionally. Her thoughts shifted to planning. She needed evidence, proof of David's infidelity that could not be denied or twisted. Screenshots, messages, timestamps, and perhaps even witnesses if the situation called for it. Everything had to be methodical, deliberate, and carefully documented. Each piece of evidence would serve not only as a shield but as a means to reclaim power in a situation that had been violently stripped from her. Her pregnancy added urgency to her approach. Rash actions could have consequences she couldn't afford. Every move had to safeguard her and her child's well-being, turning her pain into calculated resilience. Meanwhile, David remained oblivious. His arrogance, which had grown steadily over the past weeks, blinded him to the fact that Sophia was no longer the same trusting, naive wife he could manipulate at will. He continued his casual behaviors, unaware that the woman he had underestimated was quietly gathering strength, planning her steps, and preparing to reclaim control of her life. The thought of his unawareness fueled her resolve, reminding her that power often came from patience and intelligence rather than impulsive confrontation. In the stillness of her mind, Sophia reflected on what this moment truly meant. She had lost trust, yes, but she had not lost herself. Her dignity, her self-respect, and her inner strength remained intact. Each calculated step she took was a reclamation of her agency, a promise to herself that she would rise from this betrayal stronger, wiser, and more determined. As she visualized the next steps, gathering proof, confronting David and Elena on her terms, and protecting her child, she felt a quiet empowerment settle over her. Sophia was no longer merely a victim of circumstance, she was becoming the architect of her own justice, turning heartbreak into clarity, and reclaiming control over her life and her future. Sophia spent the following days carefully and methodically gathering proof of David's betrayal. Every message he sent to Elena, every suspicious phone call, and every hidden social media interaction was documented meticulously. She even enlisted the help of a close friend to witness some of the subtle patterns she had noticed, ensuring that her evidence would be undeniable. Each screenshot, each recorded conversation, was a brick in the foundation of her plan, a plan designed not for revenge, but for clarity, justice, and reclaiming her dignity. With every piece she collected, her resolve strengthened, and the initial pain of heartbreak gradually transformed into a quiet, controlled determination. The day of confrontation arrived, and Sophia was calm, almost serene. She had rehearsed the encounter in her mind countless times, anticipating excuses, manipulations, and the likely arrogance from both David and Elena. As she stepped into the room where they were together, the air seemed to crackle with tension. Her presence alone caused a subtle shift in the atmosphere, the calm authority in her gaze contrasting sharply with David's startled confusion and Elena's smug confidence. Sophia began, her voice measured yet cutting through the pretense, "I have all the evidence I need." She presented the screenshots, the recordings, and even her friend's corroboration with deliberate precision. David's face drained of color as the undeniable truth became clear. Every excuse, every half-hearted denial, crumbled under the weight of indisputable proof. His arrogance evaporated, replaced by guilt, shame, and desperation. Elena, too, faltered. The smugness that had once defined her demeanor was replaced by visible embarrassment, her confidence crumbling as the room bore witness to the exposure of her deceit. Through it all, Sophia remained composed. Her hands did not shake, her voice did not waver. She radiated a calm authority that made the confrontation about facts, truth, and consequences rather than chaos or drama. The power of her methodical, intelligent approach was clear. She had transformed her pain into control, her heartbreak into decisive action. As the confrontation concluded, Sophia felt a deep, quiet satisfaction. The betrayal that had once threatened to engulf her had been confronted and laid bare, not with impulsive rage, but with clarity, intelligence, and dignity. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of agency return, a reclaiming of her life and her emotional sovereignty, marking the turning point in her journey from victim to empowered woman. Sophia sat at the edge of her bed, her hands resting over her growing belly, the baby within her moving gently as if sensing the tension and determination in the room. The confrontation with David and Elena had ended, but the path forward required careful planning and decisive action. She knew that emotional satisfaction alone would not be enough to safeguard her future or that of her unborn child. Legal and social measures had to be considered, Divorce proceedings, custody arrangements, and financial security were no longer abstract concepts but vital steps she had to take. Every thought she entertained was deliberate, methodical, and focused on building a secure foundation for the life she would now create independently. The transformation within her was profound. The woman who had spent weeks racked with heartbreak and vulnerability now felt a burgeoning confidence coursing through her. The betrayal had stripped away illusions, but it had also forced her to confront her own strength. She realized that vulnerability did not signify weakness, it was the starting point for resilience, for reclaiming control, and for forging a future defined not by someone else's betrayal but by her own clarity and assertiveness. Her pregnancy added urgency and purpose to every decision. The life she carried inside her was a constant reminder that courage was not optional. Every choice she made now had consequences that extended beyond herself. She considered financial planning, ensuring access to resources to protect herself and her child. Custody discussions were no longer hypothetical, they were essential, guided by the principle that her child's well-being would be the ultimate priority. Even the thought of navigating a divorce was reframed from a source of fear into an act of empowerment, an assertion of boundaries, and a reclamation of self-respect. Her internal monologue reflected clarity and resolve. She reminded herself that betrayal had revealed the truth, but it had not diminished her value or capabilities. Each step she envisioned, legal consultation, financial safeguards, establishing a supportive network, was a testament to her growth. The emotional turmoil of the past weeks had catalyzed a transformation, turning despair into strategic empowerment. Sophia recognized that her future would be shaped by her strength, intellect, and dignity, not by the actions of those who had wronged her. In embracing this clarity, she felt a profound sense of agency and hope. She was no longer merely surviving the betrayal, she was actively reclaiming her life and defining the path forward for herself and her child. Sophia woke to the soft morning light streaming through her bedroom window, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't known in weeks. The heavy weight of betrayal that had once pressed upon her chest seemed lighter now, replaced by a quiet determination to nurture herself and the life growing inside her. Each day became a conscious effort to rebuild, to create a home that felt safe, warm, and full of hope. She arranged the nursery herself, selecting soothing colors and soft textures, turning the space into a sanctuary for her unborn child, a tangible symbol of new beginnings and protection. In parallel, Sophia began clearing her home of reminders of the pain David and Elena had caused. She removed gifts, photographs, and personal items that tied her to the past, placing them in boxes to be discarded or donated. Each item she let go of felt like a weight lifted from her heart, a symbolic act of reclaiming her space, her identity, and her dignity. The process was both cathartic and empowering, reinforcing that her life was now defined by her choices, not by the betrayals she had endured. As she moved forward, Sophia encountered new opportunities that reminded her of the richness of life beyond heartbreak. Friends and family rallied around her, offering laughter, companionship, and unwavering support. She also began exploring professional opportunities she had once set aside, reigniting passions and ambitions that had been dormant. Each step reinforced her sense of agency and self-worth, proving that life could still hold joy, purpose, and fulfillment. Through it all, Sophia found a profound inner peace. Her happiness no longer depended on David's presence or validation, it sprang from the confidence, resilience, and love she nurtured within herself. She recognized that her journey had transformed her, she was stronger, wiser, and more capable than she had imagined. The closing moments of her story were quiet but powerful. She sat in the nursery, cradling her belly, feeling her baby stir, and allowed herself to smile. The future, once uncertain and shadowed by betrayal, now gleamed with possibility. Sophia's life had been reshaped not by loss alone but by the strength she discovered within herself, a testament to resilience, hope, and the enduring power of new beginnings. The day Sophia went into labor was filled with a mixture of anxiety, anticipation, and quiet triumph. Her family and closest friends gathered around, offering reassurance, gentle touches, and encouraging words that reminded her she was not alone. Each contraction, each breath, was a testament to the strength she had discovered within herself over the past weeks. When her baby finally arrived, the room was filled with tears of joy, laughter, and the soft coos of a newborn, a living reminder that life could bring renewal even after the deepest pain. Sophia held her child close, feeling the rhythmic beat of new life against her chest, and a wave of empowerment and contentment washed over her. As she reflected on her journey, Sophia's mind traveled back through the heartbreak, the moments of betrayal, and the nights of tears and doubt. She acknowledged the raw pain she had endured but also recognized the immense growth it had sparked within her. Betrayal had shattered her illusions, yet it had also revealed the depth of her resilience, the clarity of her self-respect, and the power of strategic, thoughtful action. She realized that the lessons of that dark period were now inseparably woven into her identity: strength, courage, and the knowledge that she could rise from adversity stronger than before. David, in contrast, faced the consequences of his choices alone. The arrogance and disregard he had once carried were gone, replaced by remorse and isolation. He had underestimated Sophia, and the fallout left him in a position of emptiness and regret, a stark reminder of the cost of betrayal and dishonesty. Holding her child, Sophia understood that her life had entered a new chapter, one defined by motherhood, dignity, and self-empowerment. The experience had taught her that true courage was not measured by the absence of hardship but by the ability to face it, protect oneself, and emerge with clarity and strength. Her story became a beacon for those who had suffered betrayal, a testament that pain could be transformed into personal empowerment. With a final, deep breath, she looked down at her newborn, feeling a profound sense of hope and determination. She had endured heartbreak, reclaimed her life, and discovered the boundless strength within herself, a story of survival, courage, and the triumph of love, dignity, and resilience over betrayal.